Who bought you that necklace? 4 words. That's all it took for Jasmine to realize she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Not because she was caught, but because Jung's voice was too calm, too controlled. The kind of calm that comes right before someone destroys your entire world. And as his fingers traced the gold chain at her throat, Jasmine understood something terrifying. He'd been waiting for her to wear it. This wasn't an interrogation, it was a trap, and she'd walked right into it. Before we go any further, lovelies, I need you to hit that subscribe button because this story is about to twist in ways you won't see coming. Drop your city in the comments right now. I want to see where my dark romance family is watching from. New York, London, Lagos, Tokyo. Let me know. And here's the million-dollar question. Team Jung or Team Jasmine? Who do you think is really in control here? Comment below because trust me, by the end of this, you might just switch sides. The elevator doors had whispered open to the 80th floor just minutes ago, revealing the kind of penthouse that existed only in fever dreams. Jasmine's heels clicked against Italian marble as Manhattan glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows like a kingdom Jung ruled from the shadows. The gold necklace had felt like power this morning. A deliberate choice, a test. She'd worn it to see if he'd notice, if he'd care, if the man who controlled billions would finally show a crack in that ice-cold armor over something as small as a vintage pendant. Now, standing in his private domain where the air smelled of rain and his signature cologne, Jasmine felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her fitted blue blazer. Jung emerged from the darkness near his desk, and the atmosphere shifted. His eyes found the necklace, and something in his expression shattered, just for a heartbeat, before the ice returned. His fingers reached for the gold, and Jasmine's breath caught. Not because of his touch, but because of what she saw in his face. Recognition, and something far more dangerous than anger. Jung's thumb pressed against the clasp of the necklace, and Jasmine felt the heat of his skin through the thin gold chain. He wasn't trying to remove it. He was reading it, the way someone might read Braille, searching for a message written in metal and memory. "This belonged to my father," he said quietly. Not a question. A eulogy. Jasmine's pulse hammered beneath his fingertips. But she didn't pull away. She'd known, of course. That's why she'd worn it. But hearing him name it, hearing the fracture in his voice, made her strategy feel suddenly dangerous in a way she hadn't anticipated. "I found it," she said. Truth. But not all of it. Never all of it. Jung's eyes lifted from the necklace to her face, and Jasmine saw the exact moment his walls reconstructed themselves. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the cold calculation that had built his empire on calculated risks and ruthless decisions. "Where?" His voice was silk over steel. "A safety deposit box, anonymous, no name, just coordinates. And a date." He finished her sentence, his jaw tightening. "The day he died." The air between them felt combustible. Jung's fingers slipped from the necklace to her collarbone, made tracing the line where gold met skin with a touch that was part interrogation, part something else entirely. Jasmine's breath caught, and she hated herself for it. Hated how her body responded to him even now, when everything was unraveling according to plan. "Who gave you access to that box, Jasmine?" His face was inches from hers now, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Close enough to smell the whiskey on his breath from the drink he'd poured before she arrived. "No one gave me access." She held his gaze, refusing to blink. "I took it." Something flickered across Jung's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. His hand moved from her collarbone to her jaw, tilting her face upward with a touch that was possessive, yet carefully controlled. "You've been investigating me," he said softly. "Oh, how long?" Jasmine's hands moved to his chest, not to push him away, but to feel the rhythm of his heartbeat beneath expensive fabric. Strong, steady, revealing nothing. Since the day you hired me, the truth tasted like gasoline, like the match she was about to strike. Jung released her suddenly, the absence of his touch leaving her cold in the climate-controlled penthouse. He moved to the bar cart near the window with predatory grace, poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if she wanted one. His movements were precise, mechanical, the same control he used in boardrooms when negotiations turned hostile. You were never just an assistant. He handed her a glass, their fingers brushing deliberately. That's what you're telling me. Jasmine took the whiskey, but didn't drink. The amber liquid caught the light from the chandelier, they glowing like the necklace still warm against her skin. Neither were you just an employer? The admission hung between them like smoke from a gun. Jung's expression darkened, and he drained his glass in one swallow before setting it down with calculated gentleness that somehow felt more threatening than violence. Show me the coordinates. It wasn't a request. Jasmine pulled her phone from her blazer pocket, called up the photograph she'd taken of the safety deposit box label months ago. Jung took the device from her hand, his fingers lingering against hers longer than necessary, a reminder that he could take anything he wanted, but chose to ask first. He studied the image, and she watched his face transform, not with anger but with something far more complex, recognition, horror, and beneath it all, something that looked almost like admiration. These coordinates, he said slowly, are for a building that doesn't exist anymore. It burned down 20 years ago, 3 months after my father's funeral. Jasmine felt ice spread through her chest despite the warmth of the room. That's impossible. The box was dated 6 months ago. Then someone wanted you to find it. Jung's eyes met hers, and the intensity there made her knees weak. Someone wanted you to bring this necklace to me. Tonight. Now. He moved closer again, crowding her space until her back pressed against the cold glass of the window. The city sprawled behind her, 80 floors of empty air between her and the street. Why tonight, Jasmine? His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt louder than shouting. Well, what's different about tonight? Her hand moved instinctively to her midsection, and Jung's gaze followed like a hawk tracking prey. She watched comprehension dawn across his features, slow, devastating, complete. How long have you known? He asked. 8 weeks. And you waited until now to tell me. Not a question, an indictment, a wound. Jasmine lifted her chin, refusing to apologize for surviving. I needed to know if you'd care about me or just the leverage. Jung's hand covered hers against her stomach, and the tenderness of the gesture nearly shattered her carefully constructed armor. His palm was warm, steady, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight that felt like both promise and threat. I care about both, he said quietly. But someone else cares too. And that terrifies me more than you know. Before Jasmine could respond, Jung pulled a device from his desk drawer, sleek, black, expensive, military grade. He powered it on, and a soft blue light began to pulse like a heartbeat. What is that? A frequency detector. He moved closer, running the device along her shoulders with the clinical precision of a surgeon, down her arms, across her collarbone. When it passed near the necklace, the blue light shifted to red, and a low beep filled the silence like a death knell. Jasmine's blood turned to ice water. That's not possible. It's not just gold, Jasmine. It's a transmitter. Jung's expression was carved from marble, beautiful and merciless. Every word we've spoken since you put this on has been recorded, broadcast, analyzed. The implications crashed over her like a tsunami. Every conversation, every whispered secret, every moment she thought was private, intimate, hers alone, all of it had been performed for an invisible audience she'd never suspected existed. Take it off. Her voice shook despite her best efforts. Not yet. Jung's fingers closed around the pendant, his knuckles brushing against the hollow of her throat, where her pulse hammered visibly. If we remove it now, they'll know we found it. We need to make them think we're still blind, still playing the game they designed. They? Jasmine's throat felt tight, the necklace suddenly heavy as a noose. Who are they? Jung's free hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone in a gesture that managed to feel both protective and possessive, claiming and cherishing in the same breath. The people who killed my father, he said, his lips hovering near her ear so close she felt the heat of his words against her skin. The ones who've been waiting 20 years to finish what they started, and now they know about the baby, which means they know about the trust, the inheritance clause, the bloodline requirement. His voice dropped even lower, barely audible. We're going to give them exactly what they want to hear. Then Jung kissed her, slow, deliberate, devastating, not for passion, but for performance, for whoever was listening through the necklace's hidden microphone. But when Jasmine's hands fisted in his jacket and pulled him closer, when she felt him shudder against her, she knew the performance had become something else entirely, something real, something dangerous. Jung broke the kiss first, in his forehead resting against hers as they both struggled to breathe. The necklace pulsed between them, invisible audience, invisible chains, invisible war being waged through their bodies. Tell me everything, he whispered against her lips, his breath mingling with hers. Tell me who you really are. Make it convincing. Jasmine closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 2 years of lies pressing down on her shoulders, like Atlas holding the sky. The baby moved inside her, small, barely there, but real enough to make the truth unavoidable, real enough to make her vulnerable in ways she'd sworn she'd never be again. My mother's name was Elena Reeves. She felt Jung stiffen against her, but he didn't pull away, didn't drop his hands from where they rested on her waist. She worked for your father. She was his CFO, Jung finished, in his voice hollow as an empty grave. She was blamed for the embezzlement that destroyed him. She disappeared before the trial, before anyone could prove her innocence or guilt. She didn't disappear. Jasmine's hands tightened on his jacket, fingers digging into expensive fabric as if she could anchor herself to something solid in a world that kept shifting beneath her feet. She was disappeared, and I've spent 10 years trying to prove she was framed, 10 years building a case that would clear her name and destroy the people who killed her. The confession should have pushed him away, should have made him hate her, fear her, call security to have her removed from his building and his life. Instead, Jung's arms came around her waist, holding her against him with a desperation that felt like drowning and salvation at once. The necklace, he said slowly, and she heard his brilliant mind working through the puzzle. It was hers, your mother's. No. Jasmine shook her head, her sleek ponytail brushing against his hands. It was your father's gift to someone, but not to her. Never to her. Jung pulled back just enough to look at her face, and Jasmine saw the moment understanding crystallized behind his eyes like ice forming on a lake. Beautiful and deadly and inevitable. My mother, he breathed, and the words sounded like prayer and curse combined. The coordinates aren't for a building, Jung. They're for a grave. An unmarked grave in a cemetery that burned 20 years ago to hide the evidence. Jasmine's voice cracked despite her best efforts at control. Your father didn't die in a car accident, and neither did your mother. They were murdered. All together. And the necklace is the proof. If you're still breathing after that, lovelies, you need to hit that subscribe button right now because this is just the beginning. We're about to go so much deeper into this web of lies and revenge. Drop your city in the comments. I want to know where you're all watching from as this story unfolds. London, Dubai, Sao Paulo, let me see you. And tell me honestly, do you think Jasmine is telling Jung the truth, or is this just another layer of the game? Because trust me, nothing in this story is what it seems. See you in the next one. Jung stared at Jasmine, and she watched something fundamental break inside him. Not his composure. That remained intact, a mask he'd learned to wear since childhood. But beneath it, she saw the fracture lines spreading through everything he'd believed about his life, in his legacy, his very identity. My mother, he repeated, and the words sounded like he was testing them against reality. You're saying she was murdered, with my father, together. I'm saying the official story is a lie. Jasmine's voice was steady now, the confession having stripped away her last pretense. And I'm saying whoever killed them has been orchestrating everything since, including us. Jung's jaw clenched, but he didn't release her. His hands remained on her waist, anchoring them both. The necklace stays on, he said quietly, and the shift in his tone made her stomach drop. We're going to give them what they want. Jung, not the real thing. His hands framed her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones with a gentleness that contradicted the ice in his voice. A performance? They're listening? Yeah, then we put on a show that makes them think they've won. Jasmine understood immediately, her pulse kicking as Jung's fingers slid into her hair, tilting her head back. The necklace glowed between them, audience, witness, weapon turned against its makers. Make it convincing, she whispered, and felt him tense. Jung's laugh was dark, humorless, edged with something that sounded like pain. I've been convincing myself I didn't need you for 2 years. This should be easy. Then his mouth found hers again, and there was nothing easy about it. This kiss was different, deeper, desperate, edged with the knowledge that they were playing a game where the stakes were measured in lives. Jasmine's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed warnings about trust and manipulation and the dangerous line between performance and reality. Jung walked her backward until her spine hit the window, the cold glass a shock against her blazer. His body pressed against hers, and she felt his heartbeat hammering through expensive fabric. One hand braced beside her head, the other slid to her waist, possessive and protective at once. Say something, he murmured against her lips, his breath hot on her skin. Make them think you're breaking. Jasmine let her voice crack, let vulnerability bleed through. I can't do this anymore. The lying, the games. I can't. Yes, you can. Jung's mouth moved to her throat, just above the necklace, and she felt his teeth graze her pulse. Tell me you hate me. I make it real for them. I hate that I love you, she breathed, and it wasn't entirely a lie. I hate that you make me weak. His grip tightened, and she felt him shudder. For whoever was listening, they were lovers tearing each other apart. But Jasmine felt something else happening, a strange alchemy where the performance was revealing truths neither of them had intended to speak. Jung pulled away suddenly, leaving Jasmine cold and disoriented against the window. He crossed to his desk with predatory precision, pressed a button beneath the surface. Within seconds, 2 men appeared, security she'd never seen before, which meant they answered to someone other than the board Marcus Way controlled. We're compromised, Jung said, his voice all business, every trace of vulnerability erased. And initiate protocol black. The men nodded and disappeared like shadows. Jung turned back to Jasmine, and she saw the strategy forming behind his eyes, the same calculating intelligence that had built his empire from his father's ashes. Pack nothing. We leave in 5 minutes. He moved to a hidden panel in the wall, extracted a leather bag already prepared with clothes, documents, cash. Everything needed for disappearance. Marcus will expect me to run, to hide you somewhere he can't reach. We're going to give him exactly what he expects. And then, Jasmine's hand pressed protectively against her stomach, the baby suddenly real in a way it hadn't been before. Then we disappear so thoroughly he'll think we're already dead. Jung crossed back to her, his fingers working the clasp of the necklace with surgeon's precision. But first, we leave him a parting gift. He removed the necklace carefully, as if it might detonate. Jasmine felt the absence of its weight like freedom and loss at once. 2 years of planning, reduced to a piece of evidence in Jung's elegant hands. 20 years, he said softly, holding the gold up to the light. 20 years of him playing the grieving friend, while he wore my father's blood like a crown, while he poisoned my mother slowly enough that everyone believed it was grief killing her, not arsenic in her medication. Jasmine watched Jung's control fracture further, saw rage bleeding through the cracks. She stepped closer, her hand covering his where it gripped the necklace hard enough to leave marks. "We can't give him the satisfaction of making you reckless," she said, and meant it, because somewhere in the performance, like in the lies wrapped around kernels of truth, she'd started to care whether Jung survived this, whether they both did. Jung's eyes met hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. "I'm already reckless, Jasmine. I have been since the day I hired you, knowing exactly who you were and convinced myself I could control the outcome." The admission hung between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. "You knew?" Jasmine's voice came out barely above a whisper. "From the beginning?" "From the interview." Jung set the necklace on his desk, positioned it carefully. Then he pulled out his phone, typed a message with deliberate precision. "Elena Reeves's daughter, working under a false name, with forged credentials good enough to fool HR, but not good enough to fool me. I knew, and I hired you anyway." "Why?" The question felt like falling. "Because I needed to know if you were coming for me or for the truth." His hand found the small of her back, guiding her toward a private elevator she'd never known existed. "And because I'd already started investigating Marcus myself. I thought we could use each other. I didn't plan on—" He stopped, jaw working. "On what?" Jasmine demanded, even as the elevator doors opened to reveal darkness below. "On you mattering," Jung finished quietly, and pulled her into the descent. The safe house was exactly what Jung had promised: industrial, cold, designed to look hastily chosen, but actually prepared months in advance. Jasmine watched him move through the space, checking cameras she couldn't see, testing angles with the precision of someone who'd planned for this contingency long before tonight. "How long?" she asked, in her voice echoing off concrete. "How long have you known Marcus was involved in your father's death?" Jung's hands stilled on a laptop, his shoulders rigid beneath his suit jacket. "I've suspected for 8 months, since I found discrepancies in the original autopsy report, discrepancies that only made sense if someone had paid the coroner to falsify cause of death." He turned, and his expression was raw in a way she'd never seen. "I just didn't know you were part of it until 3 months ago when I traced the safety deposit box access back to an account linked to your mother's maiden name." The accusation stung, even though she understood it. Jasmine crossed to where he stood, refusing to apologize for surviving in a world that had tried to erase her family. "I was 16 when my mother disappeared. I was 17 when I found enough of her body in that drainage ditch to identify her by the dental records." Her voice didn't shake. She wouldn't let it. "Marcus Way's signature was on every document. The police report that called it suicide. The coroner's findings that ignored the ligature marks and the bullet fragments. The insurance claim that left me with nothing." Jung's jaw clenched, but he didn't look away. Didn't minimize her pain or try to explain it away. "So yes," Jasmine continued, stepping close enough to see her reflection in his eyes, "I infiltrated your company, got close to you, planned to use you to get to Marcus and destroy him the way he destroyed my family." She paused, let him see the truth. "But I didn't plan on you already knowing. I didn't plan on you investigating him too. And I sure as hell didn't plan on falling for you while we were both lying to each other." For a long moment, Jung just stared at her. Then his hand rose, cupping her face with a tenderness that felt like absolution and accusation at once. "The baby," he said quietly, and she heard something break in his voice. "Tell me it's mine. Tell me that part wasn't manufactured." Jasmine opened her mouth to confirm, to reassure, to tell him the pregnancy was natural and unplanned and terrifying and real. But before she could speak, Jung pulled out a manila folder from his bag and handed it to her. "Read it," he said. "Page 3. Her hands shook as she opened the file. Medical records. Her medical records. From a routine exam 6 months ago that Marcus had insisted all executive staff undergo for insurance purposes. And there, highlighted in yellow, was a procedure she'd never consented to, never even known about. In vitro fertilization, embryo transfer, donor egg, donor sperm. The words blurred as horror crashed over her. "You're pregnant," Jung said, his voice hollow, "but not with my child. Marcus had an embryo implanted during your physical. The genetic material belongs to him and a surrogate. He's been planning this for years, waiting for the right vessel. Someone close enough to me that the timing would seem natural. Someone whose existence he could control." Jasmine's legs gave out. Jung caught her, lowered them both to the concrete floor, and held her while she processed the violation, the theft, the complete erasure of her autonomy. "He turned you into a weapon," Jung whispered against her hair. And he's planning to use that baby, his biological child, carried in your body, to claim my father's entire estate through a bloodline clause in the trust." Jasmine pulled away from Jung's arms, her mind racing through implications like falling dominoes, every touch suddenly suspect, every moment of tenderness potentially performance, every truth revealed possibly just another layer of lies. "If the baby is his," she said slowly, working through the logic with the same cold precision she'd learned investigating corporate fraud, "then why tell me? Why not let me think it's yours? You could use it as leverage against Marcus, too." Jung's expression shifted, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something that looked like genuine fear cross his features. "Because there's something else in your medical file, like something Marcus doesn't know I found." He pulled up a second document on his laptop, hands shaking slightly as he typed the password. "The embryo he had implanted? It's not just his genetic material. It's been modified, enhanced. There's a genetic marker that will trigger a rare blood disorder, one that requires bone marrow transplant from a specific genetic match to survive." Jasmine felt ice spread through her chest. "You." "Me," Jung confirmed. "My bone marrow. My genetic material becomes the only thing that can save the child's life. Which means Marcus can force me into a position where I either donate and legally acknowledge the child as my responsibility, giving him control through proxy, or I refuse and watch an innocent baby die while the media destroys me for being a monster." The chess game revealed itself in all its horrifying complexity. Marcus hadn't just created an heir, he'd created a hostage, a genetic time bomb designed to trap Jung in a no-win scenario. "There's more," Jung said quietly, and pulled up a third file. "I had my own investigation run on the embryo. The genetic markers don't match Marcus Way. They match someone else in the database, someone whose DNA was supposed to be sealed." He turned the screen toward her, and Jasmine's world collapsed. The genetic match was labeled Subject JK-2401. Secondary markers indicated Korean male. They age 34. Identical twin. "You have a brother," Jasmine breathed. "Had," Jung corrected, his voice dead. "My twin died at birth. Or so I was told. But this embryo contains his genetic material, which means either Marcus has been storing my brother's DNA for 34 years, or your brother didn't die." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Marcus took him, raised him somewhere else, and now he's using your brother's child to destroy you." Jung nodded slowly, and she saw the weight of it crushing him. "The baby you're carrying is my nephew. Marcus's adopted son is my identical twin. And somewhere out there, my brother has been alive for 34 years, probably believing whatever lies Marcus told him about who he is and where he came from." Jasmine stood, pacing the concrete floor as her mind raced. Then we find him, your brother. We find him and we tell him the truth and we—" "I already found him," Jung interrupted. 3 weeks ago." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph. A man who looked exactly like Jung, but with harder eyes, colder posture, standing next to Marcus Way at some corporate event, labeled as Marcus's chief of security. "His name is Jin. Marcus raised him to be his enforcer, his weapon. And 3 days ago I received a message from an encrypted account." Jung's hands trembled slightly as he pulled up the message. It said, "I know what you are. I know what I am. And I'm coming for everything you stole from me." Jasmine felt the trap spring shut around them. "He thinks you're the one who separated you, and he thinks you grew up with everything while he was raised to be a killer. Marcus has been poisoning him against me for 3 decades, Jung confirmed. And now Jin is coming to take revenge on a brother who didn't even know he existed, while Marcus watches from the shadows and inherits everything when we destroy each other." The apartment door exploded inward. 4 men entered, weapons drawn, led by someone who looked exactly like Jung but moved like death itself. Jin had arrived, and as Jasmine felt Jung's hand find hers in the darkness, squeezing once, a message, a promise, a goodbye, she realized that every move they'd made, every revelation, every moment of connection had been leading to this. The final game, where the only rule was survive, and the only prize was the truth. That's where I'm leaving you tonight, lovelies. On the edge of your seats, hearts pounding, wondering if Jung and Jasmine make it out alive, or if Marcus Way's decades-long game destroys them all. If you need to know what happens next, if you need to see Jin's face when he learns the truth about who his real enemy is, then you better hit that subscribe button right now. Drop your city in the comments because I want to know where you're all watching from as we head into this final battle. Tokyo, Atlanta, Mumbai, Nairobi? Let me see my global family and tell me, do you think Jin will believe Jung, or has Marcus's poison gone too deep? Because part 2 of this story drops soon, and trust me, you do not want to miss how this ends. See you in the next one.